These games had so much promise, but they left me disappointed. Let's talk about it. Hey friends, it's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon, and like you, I put a high value on my time. We only get so much of it in this life, and generally speaking, I want to be spending it on something that I feel is worthwhile. And yes, binging NES speedruns with my hands stuck in a bag of Fritos is worthwhile. But before I undermine my own point any further, let's talk about some JRPGs that really had me excited, maybe even got me hooked, before ultimately letting me down. Here we go. I'd heard some of the rumblings about this one, that it was the word meh made into a game, that no one really liked it. I didn't know the details, but I couldn't resist giving it a try. Edge of Eternity comes from French developer Midgar Studio, and I had just finished another French game, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, so I thought, what better time than now to play all the French JRPGs that I owned? And honestly, the fact that so many people were so meh on it actually made me excited. I know a lot of the gaming public only looks for 9 or 10 out of 10 games to invest in, but some of the coolest experiences I've had were with 7 out of 10 games that really tried something different. More on that later. Maybe they didn't quite pull it off, but that's where I think the most interesting ideas come up, in those games that aren't quite as universally beloved. So I dove in. And you know what? Despite a somewhat janky visual performance on my PS5, I was actually really digging this. The story is that this medieval world was invaded by these super advanced aliens, and the humans are doing their best to fight back. The main character is fighting on the front lines, but he gets word his mom has been infected with a disease brought by the aliens, so he goes AWOL to try and save her. He teams up with his smart aleck priest of a sister to find the cure and also somehow push back the alien invasion. It's a cool premise, and one thing I really liked about it was the naturalistic performances from the voice actors. I'm not saying it was like Hollywood caliber acting or anything, but the director seemed to allow them a good deal of freedom to deliver their lines in ways that felt right. I almost kind of wonder if they did ensemble recording, because the naturalistic feel extended to the way the back and forth of the dialogue played out as well. The combat was fun and was decently interesting. Fights take place on the field where you explore, and it's then divided up into a grid that you can position yourself on in order to pull off attacks. So, what's the problem? Sounds like a winner, doesn't it? Well, aside from the aforementioned jank, which I was easily able to overlook, there were just so many bugs. More than once I found the game soft locking in a fight, and there were other stat bugs that at first just seemed like oddities, but upon researching I learned they're problems that have been known since the game released, like weapons that do the wrong amount of damage, just like weird stuff that should have been fixed. The developer just hasn't fixed them. My second hard lock was when I finally knew I had to call it quits. I am willing to overlook a lot, but once I learned that the developer was not actively trying to fix this game, I knew it wasn't worth my time. It's a real shame because I was genuinely enjoying it. I'm open to giving their new game, Edge of Memories, a chance when it comes out later this year, but they're going to have to show me that they've made a game that is a heck of a lot more stable than its older brother. Now, before we move on with the rest of the list, I hope you'll indulge me for a minute while I tell you about the sponsor of this video, FlexiSpot. When I was in the market for a new computer chair last year, everybody and their grandmother told me I should get the Aeron from Herman Miller. It's the best, all the grandmothers said. This was supposed to be the highest quality chair out there. So I bit the very expensive bullet and picked one up. And I realized almost right away, this was just not a comfortable chair. I had to buy a ton of accessories, including basic things like, a headrest, in order to make it even usable. Plus, I'm a guy that likes to sit, how should I put it, crisscross applesauce when I'm playing video games, and the Aeron just stunk for that in particular. So I said goodbye to the Aeron and hello to the ergonomic seat C7 Max from FlexiSpot. Now, this is a chair I can game in. It's got a fully adjustable lumbar and back support, a built-in adjustable headrest, fully adjustable armrests, and with the optional footrest, I can play in comfort, or just fall asleep, which I've done. It's glorious. It's also got an extremely comfortable memory foam seat cushion for my delicate tush, and I can customize the seat depth too. Now, naturally, my wife Jen wanted it on the action as well because she's been stuck with chairs that were even less comfortable than mine, so she's got one too. It's great as an office chair for when I have to do work, but it shifts so seamlessly into gaming mode. It makes sitting at my desk for hours and hours a day much more enjoyable, even during the parts when I'm not playing JRPGs. So, if you're ready to upgrade to a much more pleasant sitting experience, check out the description or the pinned comment for links to learn more. more. And thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. All right, back to the other me from before. Loop 8 was 100% gonna be my jam. I was so confident in that. I mean, just look at it, right? It's basically an anime in video game form. I loved the setting, like alternate reality 1980s Japan. It just seemed so chill and cozy, despite the promise of battles against demons and whatnot. And I'm a fan of time loop stories too, so the idea of looping through the month of August over and over until you're able to find a way to save humanity seemed right up my alley. I didn't get to it right away. It was a busy time when it came out, but I started to see reviews and I got a little bit worried. These weren't just saying that the game was kind of meh or that it was a good concept but poor execution. These reviews were brutal, like worst JRPG of the year level. Not the sort of vitriol you expect to hear about a game that looks as pretty as this. So I popped it in my Switch on a flight last year and finally dove in myself. Guys, it's really bad. I hate to say it, I try not to be so black and white blunt about things because there's almost always way more nuance to these things than we want to give them credit for on YouTube, but I just did not enjoy any moment with this game. The first issue is the load time. Holy crap, you guys, I haven't seen a modern game with this many long loads. Between every relatively small exploration screen, load. Before every battle, load. After every battle, load. Not to mention, every time you do anything, you get interrupted by the little flying squirrel god who gives you bonus points to your stats. The pacing is glacial. No, honestly, that's insulting to glaciers, and they've been through enough as it is. There is no pacing. There's just no pacing. It is not paced. There are all sorts of characters to interact with, but your interactions with them are general and vague and primarily about increasing different affection levels to get them to join you. But then, of course, they might just up and leave your party for no apparent reason. Good God, I really wish I had something good to say about this game, but I just don't. It looks really cool. There, it looks really cool. That's a good thing. The music is pretty good too. It's by Noriyuki Iwadare, who did the Lunar music. Everything else is a darn waste of potential. I'm still stinging about this game, even more than a year later. What an enormous letdown. Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch is absolutely not a game that should be on anybody's disappointing list, I know. This is the much lauded collaboration between Level 5 and Studio Ghibli. I may not be the biggest Ghibli fan in the world, but I've seen enough of their films to know that they are the real deal. The fact that they were teaming up with a big studio like Level 5 to make a video game sent the JRPG world into hysterics, and we were all so freaking ready for this game. I was there day one, even though this came out on the PS3, a generation that I was really not super into when it comes to gaming. I knew this was going to be something special. And look, the thing is, it is special. This is an incredible game, from the graphics to the music by Ghibli's own Joe Hisaishi. It was an aesthetic masterpiece. The footage you're seeing is from the PlayStation 4 remaster, but this game looked freaking amazing in its original form too. So it wasn't a disappointment on any of those levels for me at all. I guess for me it boiled down to one thing, and it's one thing that I usually can overlook: the gameplay. Again, not that it's bad, just that it was and is definitely not my preferred style. This game is a monster catcher, like your various Pokémon. I don't care for that type of combat in general. See, I'd much rather have a party of characters with personalities that I care about, equal members of a team that are fighting together for some specific reason. Having a bunch of familiars that I can send out to do my bidding just doesn't do it for me. Now, you can also fight yourself, so that's a pretty nice distinction between this and something more straightforward like Pokemon, but it just doesn't move the needle enough for me. You do eventually get more party members that aren't familiars, but I had already lost interest before that happened. And that's because I didn't find the story compelling enough to stick with it. And believe me, if the story is compelling enough, I can push my way through all sorts of combat that I am not crazy about. Now, a few years later, when the sequel came out, I genuinely enjoyed that one. It was much more of an action RPG, and I found way more to connect with on a story level. But the original Ni no Kuni just unfortunately occupies this space as a game that I wish I liked more, but that just really let me down. Out of all the games on this list, it's honestly the one that I feel like I'd be most likely to give a second chance to. Just playing through a bit of it to get footage for this got me feeling like I might be able to enjoy it more this time around, but we'll see. There's already a lot of games in my backlog. I don't know if I can afford to give any second chances right now. For a long time, this pick felt like blasphemy. As a Final Fantasy fan since I was a little kid, I almost couldn't accept that the latest entry was just not doing it for me. It's not that I had a problem with change. I was absolutely fine with the series experimenting, changing its identity, seeing what might work better in a higher definition future. The problem was, and still is, if I'm honest, I don't think MMO style fighting is the way to do high def fighting. This can make me sound like a bit of a hypocrite because, after all, I love the Xenoblade series, and those games have taken the whole concept of MMO style battles and turned the dial up to 11. I think the difference for me there, though, is that you still have a significant amount of input necessary in order to succeed in fights. Timing special moves and managing cooldowns basically is the combat in that series, and over the years I've begun to find that more enjoyable, even if it remains a battle system I like less than most others. Final Fantasy XII doesn't really have any of that. In 12, you target an enemy and then you auto-attack it. Sure, you can take a time out from sword swinging to use a spell or a technique by navigating through traditional style menus, but there's just not that much more to it than that. You attack until the enemy goes down, at which point you target the next enemy, and the cycle continues. And not only that, but one of the game's most praised features is something that I find incredibly boring. That's the gambit system. The idea here is that you create a series of if-then statements for your party members to follow. If your HP drops below 25%, use a potion. That sort of thing. I've done a tiny bit of programming in my life, and it's definitely not something I want to do in my free time. You're creating a system whereby the game plays itself, and that's just... I don't know, gang, that just doesn't seem fun to me. On top of the issues I have with the combat, Final Fantasy XII is a heavily political story. When I first played it, I didn't really feel like the characters mattered all that much. At the very least, I didn't think they were that interesting. From a series that gave me Cecil and Locke and Terra and Cloud and Zidane, I just wanted so much more. I know the team behind 12 is different than the others, and they threw in plenty of nods to the series, of course, but more than a Final Fantasy, this feels like a Matsuno game. Matsuno, of course, being the creator of Final Fantasy Tactics. While I absolutely love the Ivalice Chronicles remaster of Tactics, I don't think I'm going to be able to connect with the Zodiac Age remaster of 12. There's just not enough there of interest to me for me to hold on to. Voodoo is best known nowadays for putting out games that are, to put it mildly, very divisive. There's a large subset of the JRPG reviewing space that outright hates them, in fact. And even though I frequently find myself in the defending Furyu camp, I can sort of see where some of them are coming from. A lot of Furyu's games feel a bit underbaked. Like, there are some really good ideas in there, but they need more time in the oven. For me, that's led to a lot of really enjoyable experiences. Recall a little bit ago when I talked about the 7 out of 10 sort of experience. That's Furyu in a nutshell, right? When you're making a game like that, it usually means that you as a developer are taking some big swings, and maybe you're not hitting it out of the park, but it does make the game more interesting. The Caligula Effect Overdose is the sort of 7 out of 10 game that unfortunately just didn't quite hit for me the way that some others have. It's a fun, if not entirely original concept. You and a bunch of other people are trapped in some sort of virtual world with no way out. The AI in the system has apparently gone rogue, and its unique way of going rogue isn't to try and kill everyone, but to make everyone listen to their mixtape. A whole bunch of trapped people have bought into the AI's way of doing things and have become musicians with a capital M, and they produce music that's keeping the vast majority of the people complacent. Both you and your fellow teammates are an exception to that. You are the Go Home Club, and it's your mission to figure out how to get the heck out of this nightclub that never closes. There's a fairly cool, slick style to the proceedings that I think could have even been positively compared to Persona if they had taken a bit more time to iron out some of the kinks. It's not a terrible game to look at least not at first glance. When you start to run around the dungeons, though, you begin to see how painfully samey everything looks. The battle system is actually really cool in theory. You can set up multiple moves for each member of your party and insert them into a timeline of the proceedings. You can try to anticipate how the enemy will behave and adjust accordingly before you even land the first hit. I say it's cool in theory because, at least on the less punishing difficulties, there's really no need to use the battle system to its full potential anyway. There's something off in the balance here, where you could essentially just hit auto battle for every fight, even bosses to an extent, and you'd have no problem breezing through it. I'd have loved to see more adjustments to the fights to make working within the uniqueness of the battle system an important part of the game, even on easier difficulty settings. And yeah, I know I could raise the difficulty, but have you met me? But either way, lowering the difficulty shouldn't fundamentally change the way you play the game, and here it really does. I was initially lured in by the chill vibes and some of the cool aesthetics and effects, but the veneer wears off way too quickly, and I lost interest after maybe 10 hours. Really a bummer. I've heard the sequel is much better, but I haven't played that yet. Hopefully, I'll get around to it one of these days. When I look at a remake like Trials of Mana or a new game like Visions of Mana, I can't help but feel shortchanged by the Secret of Mana remake. Here was one of the most important JRPGs on the Super Nintendo, and its remake was relegated to this. If you're not familiar, let me try and explain. The Secret of Mana remake is almost a shot-for-shot remake, but instead of pushing the perspective in and creating a true 3D action RPG, the developers opted for the same overhead 3/4 view of the original. Now, that in and of itself wouldn't necessarily be bad. There's something to be said for that kind of faithful remake. But when you look at what's actually on the screen, it becomes clear the familiar perspective isn't really doing the game any favors. The models are colorful, but stiff, and nothing about them feels particularly charming. Cutscenes involve some more interesting and dynamic camera angles, but the impact of those scenes and the added voice acting are diminished by the fact that the characters barely animate. Their mouths don't move, and like I said, their stiff movements just make this game feel unforgivably budget. That's not what I wanted in a Secret of Mana remake. Considering how beloved that original game is, both to me and to the community at large, it's strange to think about how these various decisions were made. There's some elements that remain the same, but honestly should have been improved, like the lengthy wait for your character to charge back up to 100% efficiency after every attack, a system that was quickly abandoned in the next Mana game, by the way. There was always a bit of jank to the original game. I honestly think it was something that a lot of us who were nostalgic for it found kind of charming. But that jank finds its way into this remake as well, and if it's cute in the original, it is not cute here. Delayed hits, cheap shots, and the remastered music is really disappointing too. I love Hiroki Kikuta's music. The original tracks are among the best the SNES ever put out, and the new versions just do not do them justice. Fortunately, at least in that regard, you can change the music back to the original sound from the menu. I can't imagine playing even as long as I did without being able to listen to the original tunes. The Mana series has come a long way since its origins on the Game Boy, and this remake was an opportunity to create a new version to stand proudly alongside the games that have come since. Instead, this one gets shunted off into the back, out of frame in the family portrait. It's really a shame. I hope that the possibility of another much better remake isn't fully off the table, because this game deserves it. And that's it. What did you think? If you agree with any of these, let me know down in the comments. I'd say if you disagree to go ahead and do the same, but I imagine you probably already have. If you're new to my channel, would you consider subscribing? It actually really helps me out a ton if you can. I also have channel memberships, so if you're open and able to support me in the channel that way, I'd be super grateful. And thanks as always, of course, to my current members. You guys are the best, legitimately. Check out my podcast, the JRPG Pursuit. We talk about JRPGs with new episodes dropping every single Wednesday. Link is in the description. With all that, until next time, bye.